Welcome to It's Your Ego, Stupid, a show lovingly intended for millions of spiritual, intelligent, and imperfect people like you who may at times be led into ego stupidity, a lesser version of yourself and a lesser version of life. This show will give you a much deeper understanding of what ego is, what it's doing to your life, how it can weaken your human and spiritual wellness, and how you can heal in each of these areas if needed. It's Your Ego, Stupid will heighten your awareness of the intense link between your ego and spirit, your humanity and divinity, and the synergy that can lead to the best version of you and your life. Your host is Dr. Nick Martin, a licensed psychologist who has worked in the clinical, university, school, and private practice settings over the past 40 years, while serving as a therapist, diagnostician, educator, and consultant. Welcome again to It's Your Ego, Stupid. And now your host, Dr. Nick Martin.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Nick Martin, also known by some as Ego Man, due to my intense focus on ego and how it's impacting our lives, both humanly and spiritually. And I want to thank you for listening to It's Your Ego, Stupid on OMTimes Radio. The title of today's show is Roles People Live, the Paranoid Person. During the show, I'll be looking at people whose lower ego flexibility energy is leading them towards living in the role of the paranoid person as they go about living their daily lives. A person who has developed a significant distrust for all that is going on around them, as well as the people they have contact with. A person who is only willing to trust themselves and those who think exactly like them. A person who is extremely rigid in their thinking and has extreme difficulty changing their mind, even when confronted with overwhelming facts that seriously question the validity of what they are thinking. Often harboring a great deal of anger due to being frequently confronted by a world that challenges their version of it. This is a person who often withdraws and self-isolates in an effort to be protected from a world they poorly understand, often wanting to live in some remote region where social contact is very limited. There are plenty of people who live in this role because there is no shortage of the supply of the lower ego flexibility energy that serves to drive people who are living in this role. We can find many of them who are caught up in some exaggerated conspiracy theories in which there is no evidence supporting the views that they are holding, often thirsting for opinion news to tell them anything that supports their conspiratorial thinking, which the news is also often so willing to do. Today I'm going to take you into the paranoid person's mind by sharing with you what ego is leading them towards thinking or not thinking, feeling or not feeling, and doing or not doing, and exactly what's happening when a person is living in this role, all in the name of their survival, which is ego's ultimate and only purpose in our life, to be our survival energy, both daily and mortal. During the show, I'll be focusing on two main areas, ego's voice and spirit's voice. When I talk about ego's voice, I'm talking about the mixture of one's ego energy and one's mind. In the case of today's program, the mixture of the paranoid person's lower ego flexibility energy and their mind. The place where their thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, values, and prejudices are formed. A place that can be called the ego mind, or ego space, as I refer to it in my work, and lays the foundation for their personality and paranoia. It's their lower ego flexibility energy that's impacting the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that the paranoid person forms and uses in their daily life, which becomes their ego voice. Ego doesn't form the thoughts the paranoid person is using, because it can't think and has no awareness of itself, or the energy that it is, or the person whose mind it is infiltrating. The person living in the role of paranoid person forms the thoughts while building on the ego energy at work in their mind. Ego just provides the fuel, the energy. When ego is impacting what's going on in the paranoid person's mind, they are listening to and speaking with ego's voice, not their own, but they often don't know it. Ego is in the foreground of their life, and they are in the background. Now, ego should be in the background of our life and only present when needed if our survival is truly being threatened. And that's why tuning into our ego energy is one of the 3 contributors to ego medicine. We and the paranoid person need to know whose voice we are truly listening to and speaking with in our thoughts, words, and deeds as we go about living our daily lives. Is it ego's voice or is it our voice? We want to believe it's ours, but don't kid yourself, which is something that's easily done by many. We all need to get the real, truthful, honest, and potentially painful answer to that question. Is it ego's voice or mine? A question that most people fail to get the answer to because they don't know how to go about getting it. And that's what my work is about. Helping you to get that answer and doing something about it if necessary. In a way, finding out if you're living in a role you didn't realize you're living in, just as the paranoid person is, which is happening for many people, whether they're a paranoid person, or a narcissist, or a sociopath, or any of the roles I talk about in my programs on roles people live, and in my book, The 2 Voices Within. Another way of putting it, the paranoid person doesn't know they're being a paranoid person. The narcissist often doesn't know they're being a narcissist. And the dictator doesn't know they're being a dictator because they're unaware of the ego energy operating in their mind and their life and living on a 24/7 basis. But they need to find that answer out so they can be truly speaking with their voice in their life and not ego's. Or they'll just spend their life surviving and never truly and fully living. After I get done talking about ego's voice and what the paranoid person needs to hear more from it during the 2nd segment of our program, I'm going to be sharing in the 3rd segment what the paranoid person is unable to hear from spirit due to being kept at a distance from spirit's voice by the unhealthy ego energy at work and the distancing effect it has on hearing the voice of spirit. Even though the paranoid person has a spiritual core that we all have, due to having the love, life, and energy God is within them, they are not spiritually well, because they can't be spiritually well in their life, due to what their ego energy is doing in it and to it. Their unhealthy, imbalanced, lower ego flexibility energy is not allowing them to hear about and be the love, life, and energy God is within their thoughts, words, and deeds, particularly towards others. It's not allowing them to fully realize the divine gifts of their life, being able to create their life, eternal life, and God within them. Sadly, Spirit's voice is something they may never hear or come to know unless they heal their ego energy. Sadly, the ego energy of the paranoid person is getting in the way of connecting to their divinity, of being their divinity in their daily life. Sadly, this is something that happens to many people in their life, whatever role they're living in. Many people die living in the role they have been living for 30, 40, or 50 years of their life, never coming to know divine truth and the divine gifts they have received. they never get better. Many paranoid persons never get better. They die never having fully lived. They spent all their time surviving within their paranoid person thoughts, beliefs, values, attitudes, and prejudices. With those sobering thoughts, I'll get started looking deeply into the paranoid person by first giving you a brief description of the role of the paranoid person, a person you may or may not be acquainted with in your life, but is out there in society, if not in your home, so that we can be on the same page as to the role and the kind of person I'm talking about. The paranoid person has developed a significant distrust for all that is going on around them. They often approach things with a great deal of suspicion and skepticism, particularly when it may come to involve some changes that affect their life. Very suspicious, very skeptical of changes taking place. And they can readily latch on to or construct conspiracy theories with a minimal or absence of any support. They readily find the darkness and danger in people, unless they know them extremely well. So distrust and suspiciousness are often what they bring into their interactions with people that they don't know well, which is often the case for all of us. We meet new people, but unlike the paranoid person, we usually give them some of the benefit of the doubt, trying to get them to know them better before we form hardened impressions of who they are. Well, the paranoid person walks into the encounter, the situation, with preconceived notions driven by skepticism and distrust. The paranoid person forms rigid, inflexible thoughts that are often lacking in the necessary social validation, which are intended to keep them safe. The paranoid person is often good intellect is overruled by their ego energy, often keeping them stuck in what they are thinking or want to think. Survival is permeating and guiding them towards extremes in thinking that are about ensuring their safety and protecting them from others, often making thoughts subjective, narrow, and rigid to meet the emphasis on survival within their ego energy. There's often a lapse in rationality and logical thinking that's taking place. It keeps them at a distance from things that don't fit with what they want to think. The only thinking the paranoid person can trust is their own, because the paranoid person's lower ego flexibility energy severely limits the acceptance and toleration of new ideas, beliefs, and values from their own. In order to make friends with them and to be their friend, they need people to duplicate their thinking. And there can be no daylight between their thinking and that of others. So they want people to agree with them and think exactly the way they think, irrespective of whatever the issue is. And this is often why they often live in an isolated existence, both physically and socially. People who may live near them may see them infrequently because the paranoid person prefers to keep their distance, again, socially and physically. Exposing themselves to the thinking of others for the paranoid person would place them at risk. The paranoid person often feels endangered by different thoughts and beliefs. So they keep the door to their mind locked, so these new, different, or better ideas can never get in. And they are good at rejecting science and truth if it doesn't fit with what they want to think. The survival emphasis rooted in their ego energy is so intense that it keeps the door to their mind tightly closed, even when they're being confronted with hard evidence that directly challenges the accuracy, validity, rationality, logic of what they're thinking. For the paranoid person, conversations can only be superficial if they take place with different people. So very mundane, superficial thoughts might be exchanged, but nothing that goes beyond that. How's the weather outside? Changing the paranoid person's thinking would expose them to danger by compelling them to admit that they were not as well protected as they had thought. For the paranoid person, it's scary for them to think, I was wrong. That is a thought that is very alien to the paranoid person. The paranoid person, like others with lower ego flexibility energy, is intensely consumed with the notion that they are deeply connected to absolute truth. And we're talking about absolute human truth. That they've got it right and that everyone else has got it wrong. They view not having the truth as dangerous and a threat to their survival. So they have to insist that they have never been without ownership of the truth. Something that can be done by refusing to change their mind. So this is an overview of the experiences, the approach that people who are living in the role of the paranoid person. I hope this provides you with some greater familiarity with people who are living in the role of the paranoid person, and that you can use as a frame of reference as we go further into today's show. We're coming up on our first break. When we return, I'll be looking at what the person living in the role of the paranoid person needs to hear and recognize from the voice of ego. That's shaping the way they think, feel, and behave. This is Dr. Nick. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, and I'll see you after the break.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the Internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, Dr. Nick Martin here. I want to invite you to visit my website, egoandspirit.info, where you can find lots of information on ego and download your free ebook copy of It's Your Ego Stupid. Fix it to fix your life. Also, please visit the shop page where you can find each of my other books, Ego Therapy, Ego Spiritualism, and The Two Voices Within.
COVID-19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, a show for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people, just like you and me. Now we're going to take a look at the voice of ego operating in the mind of the paranoid person. These are the kinds of thoughts rooted in lower ego flexibility energy the paranoid person is using to survive in their life and serve as the foundation for the thinking, feeling, and behaving they make use of as they go about their daily life. These are the kind of thoughts that they must come to hear, recognize, and change if they are ever to become a better person, a whole person, and someone who can be their humanity and divinity. Ego's voice says, you must cling tightly to all that you know. The thoughts, words, and deeds upon which you stand will keep you safe and ensure your survival. You know all that can be known. Nothing remains hidden from you. Here the paranoid person is teaching themselves, with the help of their lower ego flexibility energy, that all of their thoughts and beliefs and whatever they think is truth. So we have a paranoid person who is taking everything that they think as being gospel, with no room for questioning or consideration of the inaccuracies of what they're thinking. The paranoid person is to resist any attempt by others to change them. So within the mind of this paranoid person, the lower ego flexibility energy has driven them to refuse, to resist anybody's efforts to change them, because they already know the truth and someone else cannot lead them to a different truth than the one they know and want to know. That the truth they possess and own is the means to their protection, safety, and survival, and can never be abandoned. Again, there's the purpose of this sense of owning the truth is that it enhances this need, ego-rooted, the energy's purpose to promote that sense of one's safety and survival and protection. So ownership of the truth, as is the case for all people with lower ego flexibility, is extremely important. The paranoid person is to look upon their thoughts or beliefs as absolute, so that nothing is hidden from them. Meaning, if you feel like you have the absolute truth, and not the, quote, relative truth that we actually do possess, because our realities are shaped by our own experiences from the past, events, relationships, circumstances, and so on, this is alien to the paranoid person. They have to approach truth as being an absolute truth, because that thought, that faulty, inaccurate belief, for them promotes this notion, I'm safer because I already know all that can be known. Ego's voice says, you must not question or change your thoughts, as this would weaken you and make you unsafe. You must not listen to others, as they only seek to weaken you. No one can protect you but yourself. And this you must do by holding your own thoughts above all others. Here the paranoid person is teaching themselves, with the aid of their lower ego flexibility energy, that there is no place for reflecting upon or questioning one's thoughts, beliefs, or version of reality. And that's the rigidity, the inflexibility of the lower ego flexibility mind of the paranoid person. So taking that moment of reflection or introspection, to possibly question, that is not permitted. That is not something the paranoid person is allowing themselves to do, that they teach themselves that they are not able to do. And that doing so would be dangerous, because then they would no longer have the protection of the absolute truth. So by questioning this, questioning your thoughts, your beliefs, the things that healthy people do in order to grow the quality of their mind toward reality and truth, is something that in the frame of reference of a paranoid person cannot be done, because it's like an admission, the admission of not having the truth. And that's just intolerable for those who are living in the role of the paranoid person. And that letting others do that by listening to them would do the same thing. So letting them, listening to others, embracing their different thoughts, ideas, or beliefs would be an invitation to saying that one does not own the truth, the absolute truth, which is very much a part of the mindset of the paranoid person. And that the paranoid person is also to look upon anyone who is trying to change their mind as dangerous and with suspicion. The paranoid person with the ego energy filtering into their mind, is teaching themselves to keep their distance, that anyone who would seek to change them cannot be coming from a good place, a loving place, but they're actually coming from a dark place, trying to make them unsafe, unprotected, and that no one else can do the protecting but themselves. So the paranoid person has the sole responsibility of protecting themselves, and no one else does. No one else can offer them healthy versions of truth, beliefs that could be supportive of the paranoid person, that the paranoid person teaches themselves with the energy flowing into their mind, that no one else can protect them but themselves. Ego's voice says, distrust is your oxygen, and you must have it to keep you safe. You will survive best and be protected in your suspicion. Beware of those who would teach you different thoughts, words, or deeds, even those offered in love, as they are only disguises. Fear is your friend, as it will warn you of those who would do you harm. Here the paranoid person is teaching themselves, with the help of their lower ego flexibility energy, that they must always look at others with suspicion and be on the lookout for deception. That distrust is like a good friend that they must always keep nearby. Again, this is a thought that's in the mind of the paranoid person. They may not be conscious of it, but it's a thought that they have formed, that they are operating with, to always distrust other people. That's the safest way to be, the way to be most protected. That the paranoid person is not to let down their guard, which would come in the form of listening to anything different from what they know to be true or want to be true. So that would be a form of letting one's guard down. So again, the door to their mind is meant to be kept totally shut. To be suspicious of ideas and thoughts that are offered even within a loving disguise. So the paranoid person is to perceive people who appear to be coming from a place of love and good intentions as not to be trusted. And that fear is a good thing that will keep you protected. Ego's voice says they only seek to hide things from you and weaken you. Their difference makes them unequal to you and unworthy of you. You must know of them to keep yourself safe, but do not honor them. They would only harm, defeat, or destroy you if you honored them. These are the thoughts, the ideas that others might offer. Your ways are superior and will keep you safe. Here the paranoid person is teaching themselves with the help of their lower ego flexibility energy to always look at people as up to no good and with suspicion. The paranoid person is to look down on people and their ideas, to immediately, in a way, disqualify them because they're different, so that they can be seen as weaker and disconnected from truth. When I was thinking about this particular idea, I was thinking about how often grandiosity is present in paranoid individuals, that they tend to, think that they are above others. And that's this business of the absolute truth and ownership of the absolute truth that often they carry with them, that makes them feel like what they have to offer is better. And that pay attention to what others are saying or thinking, mainly to know where they stand, and so that you're not caught off guard. So just sort of get an idea of what people are thinking or what they're believing, not so much to embrace it, but just to kind of be wary of where people are coming from and what they're trying to have you think or believe. The paranoid person has the safety and the security of superiority that protects them from the weaknesses of others, particularly in their thoughts and beliefs. They believe that they possess, again, I used the word grandiose or grandiosity earlier, this notion of superiority, the illusions, egoic illusions of separation and inequality. In this case, they are more than or greater than or more worthy than the others are. In a way, these are what I call functional illusions, because people feel better about things in themselves when they are embracing them, even though they are not connected to reality. Ego's voice says, trust must only be given to those who know and live your truth. Those who do not try to change you are your true friends. They will not lead you into weakness and will keep you safe. If they stray from your likeness, you must let them go, lest you be weakened by them. If they betray you in this way, they have become your enemy and must be distrusted. Here the paranoid person is teaching themselves, with the help of their lower ego flexibility energy, that the only people they should be willing to associate with are those that share their beliefs, their truth, their reality. These are the only people that they can trust, who will not threaten their safety, violate their needs for being protected by them. That trust in others is to be based on complete agreement with the paranoid person. So the paranoid person really needs anyone else in order to qualify as a friend, to be on the very same page they are on. There cannot be any daylight between what their thinking is and what the other person's thinking is. That risks their concerns about owning the truth. That the only people to be friends with are those who will not expose you to anything different from what you know or want to know. So there's a lot of need for requiring that people are on the same page. The paranoid person must let go of people who may change or drift towards different views because they become dangerous and a threat to the paranoid person. So in a way, it's hard to be in a longer-term relationship with a paranoid person because inevitably we all may change. We may acquire new things and grow. And as a result, we become somewhat different than the person we were. The paranoid person doesn't want anything to change, and they don't want any of the people that they are surrounded by to change. And if they change, that is viewed as a betrayal, changing in the way they look at things or think about things or understanding things. That these are people to be looked upon as betraying the paranoid person, and now to be seen as an enemy, no longer to be trusted. I talk about the abnormal normal, the ego stupidity. So much of what I've just shared with you during this segment is about that, ego stupidity and abnormal normal that's shaped by the prism through which the paranoid person is looking through, comprised of lower ego flexibility energy. We have reached the end of our focus on ego's voice. I hope that this has given you greater insight as to the impact of lower ego flexibility energy within the mind of the paranoid person. We're coming up on our second break. When we return, we'll be looking at what the person living in the role of the paranoid person is unable to hear from the voice of spirit due to the unhealthy, imbalanced ego energy that is at work. This is Dr. Nick. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, and I'll see you after the break.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside
each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, a show for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people, just like you and me. Now I'll be looking at what the voice of spirit is saying to the paranoid person that they're unable to hear due to the blockage being caused by their lower ego flexibility energy, and the distance from their divinity that results from the thoughts and messages contained within ego's voice that I shared with you earlier. Along with coming to recognize ego's voice using ego medicine, the paranoid person will need to hear the voice of spirit in order to fully heal and bring about the synergy, the merging, and the unification of their humanity and divinity. So now I'll be taking a look at spirit's voice. Spirit's voice says, your fear is leading you from the truth, helping you to build the prison in which you reside, which is built of thoughts, words, and deeds born of fear and distrust. Within this prison, you cannot know the love, life, and energy God is that surrounds you and is within you. The prison gives you no true hope of survival and reflects only your suffering. Here, Spirit is saying that the paranoid person is being guided by their fear into the creation of a false reality, comprised of fear-based thoughts, words, and deeds. That it's a reality in which they have become imprisoned by bars comprised of rigid thoughts containing false beliefs. An imprisonment created by the paranoid person within the nature of the thoughts that they are carrying with them, that are being influenced by the lower ego flexibility energy that has led to their creating of them. This prison is comprised of false beliefs, is preventing them from recognizing their divinity and the love, life, and energy God is, both within them and others. And that this prison can only offer them the suffering that comes from failing to recognize and be their divinity. The inability to be the love, life, and energy God is within their being is suffering. This is a prison that can be removed with the use of ego medicine that can help address the egoic voice that is occurring within the mind of the paranoid person. Spirit's voice says, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven from this place, as within the kingdom of heaven there is no need for protection. This prison is a reflection of your suffering because you have been given the gift of God within your being. You can never be truly alone or isolated, as God is always within you. Here, Spirit is saying that there is no need to seek for protection when one is being the love, life, and energy God is. When one is able to be the connective, unconditional, unlimited, and unburdened love God is. When one can recognize the presence of God in all forms of life, including oneself and all others, and recognize it with honor and respect, not distrust and suspicion, and being able to recognize the truth and understanding embodied within the energy God is. Heaven is a place where one does not need to seek or receive protection from others. That failing to recognize that God is always accompanying the paranoid person along their journey is suffering. So the paranoid person is living in a very isolated world when it comes to the realm of social life and people, and that's suffering. The suffering of being and feeling alone and isolated when one truly isn't. Being fearful of people and ideas you don't need to be afraid of is suffering. The fear of others and their thoughts can be removed with the use of ego medicine, dealing with the lower ego flexibility energy that continually flows into the mind of the paranoid person. With the use of ego medicine can help to stop its flow and let it be replaced by healthier ego energy that is balanced. Spirit's voice says, the love God is can empower you beyond any fear you have known. You must call upon it. Your connection to this love, not distrust, is what makes you strong. It will help you unlearn the fear and distrust of your neighbor, which has weakened and imprisoned you. Here, Spirit is saying that being the unconditional, connective, unburdened, and unlimited love that God is, can allow the paranoid person to experience the true empowerment of love, rather than the disempowerment of fear. That the paranoid person can find it within themselves, but unfortunately it's being hidden by their ego energy, particularly the lower ego flexibility energy is blocking them from it, which will help them to lessen it and remove their fear, and will replace it with the healthy trust that can be built upon love. A healthy trust that can be brought about by ego medicine. Spirit's voice says, the love God is resides in all of your neighbors. You need not fear them. Only call upon this love within them. The illusions of separation, unworthiness, and inequality you find in your neighbors can only weaken you. Your neighbors are not your enemy. You are. They are not consumed with harming you. You are. They are not the reason for your distrust. You are. Here, Spirit is saying that the paranoid person must awaken to an awareness that divine truth is also present in all others. And that's a very difficult idea for people who are in any of the egoically imbalanced energies are experiencing, have that difficulty fully recognizing that all people are the love, life, and energy God is within them. To call upon and recognize this within others, rather than just expecting the worst of them. So the paranoid person is to be seeking to know and realize the best that exists within others, which they unfortunately fail to recognize by their paranoid ways of looking and understanding other human beings. That when the paranoid person is looking down upon others and seeing them as separated or unworthy or unequal, doesn't weaken others, but is actually a means to weakening themselves. And that's a really important thought, that the paranoid person is trying to elevate themselves above others and creating a sense of being separated from them, safer that is too, feeling more worthy and feeling unequal in the sense of being greater than, that this is actually weakening themselves, not strengthening themselves. That the paranoid person is constructing an enemy out of people that truly doesn't exist. So they have, through their energy, led to their perceptions and conclusions and misunderstandings of people. And that the true enemy is not others, but themselves in the form of their false beliefs about people. That is the enemy that Spirit is referring to, this faulty thinking, beliefs, values, attitudes, prejudices that the paranoid person has constructed and which they carry within and apply in their life, playing out in their suspicions and skepticism and distance, that's the true enemy that the paranoid person has. And that the source of their distrust is not really other people, but themselves. That the distrust is really rooted in themselves, not in the people that surround them in particular. And that this is an awareness that can be brought forth and through the use of ego medicine, but would help to deal with the lower ego flexibility energy that has led to all the distortions that the paranoid person are engaging in about people, in the faulty notion that this can further protect them, keep them safe, and promote their healthy survival. Spirit's voice says, you must become a true friend to yourself. That which is hidden has been hidden from you by you. You are the maker of your darkness, and you can be the maker of your light. Your beliefs are keeping you from the divine truth, a truth that will free you, empower you, and cease your suffering. Here, Spirit is saying that the paranoid person must take ownership of the responsibility for becoming their friend. A friendship they have been unknowingly hiding from themselves within the rigid and inflexible false beliefs that they carry around about people. That the paranoid person has the gift of creating their life, a creation in which they can come to see people in a truer and more loving light. A task that can be undertaken by freeing oneself from false, destructive beliefs about people that have shaped how they know them and are being with them. And again, this work, this task of coming to know people in the light of love rather than fear is something that can be accomplished with the use of ego medicine in an effort to deal with the unhealthy lower ego flexibility energy, which is the source, the energy that's flowing into the mind of the paranoid person that is led to the shaping of all of the paranoid thoughts and beliefs and so on that they have constructed. We have reached the end of our focus on Spirit's voice for this show. I hope that what I've shared with you will allow those needing to do so to hear the voices of ego and spirit that must be heard, so that they can truly speak with more of their voice in their life and not ego's, and get on with the business of truly and authentically living and not just surviving or existing. I want to mention that you can purchase each of my books, Ego Therapy, Ego Spiritualism, The Two Voices Within, and It's Your Ego Stupid at the online bookstores for Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Balboa Press. You can also purchase focused ego meditations on the shop page of my website, egoandspirit.info, which can help you to know when you are truly speaking with your voice in your life and not ego's, as you go about healing your ego energy where needed, in its power, flexibility, or vulnerability. I end today's show with this message. The great news is that working to heal your ego energy using ego medicine by growing your awareness of its symptoms, ego stupidity, insights, and spiritual impact will allow the divine truth in your being to flow and to shine through you, and allow you to fully embrace each of the divine gifts. The spiritual part of healing is a given. It's part of your endowment. Divine truth and the divine gifts are part of your heritage that already exists within you. You need do nothing more to be spiritual. You already are. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You only need to enhance your humanity with ego medicine so that all which is available to you is given. Fix your ego to fix your life, humanly and spiritually. Thank you for listening and allowing me to be your servant. Please have a great week, and do come back to my next program. In peace and love, this is Dr. Nick saying goodbye for now.